Aarti, Ilshat, welcome to this event. Are you able to hear me?
Thank you, sir. Yes, honored
Are
to
you
be
able to hear
here.
me? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for joining. I'm just waiting. We'll just take another minute.
Okay.
Yana and Fias have said they will just join. Once they
Okay.
join, we'll start. Yeah.
Good morning, Miss Kiko, if I'm right pronunciation.
Yeah. Tiku is fine.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, since I saw that announcement, I followed most of all in Twitter.
Okay, I think most of us are here, so that let us start the event first. I think Yana and Arif will join in a little while later. They are having some technical issues. Welcome everybody for this interesting webinar that we are hosting today on for two reasons. One is we are going to be releasing a report that Law and Society Alliance, which is the organization that I belong to, has come out with. It's a report on the it's a comparative study basically on the human development, the human rights issues concerning Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and also we'll be having a debate in which we have a very uh, eminent panelists who will be participating. Let me first introduce the panelists, and then I'll move on to the subject of the day, and also we'll talk about the report a little bit before we get back to the panelists. I'll go in the alphabetical order so that there is not much of an issue basically on seniority or anything else. I'll start with Aarti Tikku. Aarti Tikku is a dear friend of mine. She's a journalist. She's a senior journalist based in New Delhi. We have worked together earlier in the Times of India. Earlier, she was a correspondent in Jammu and Kashmir at the time, and I was working in Chandigarh at the time. And currently, she's with Indo-Asian News Service. She's an activist also in the sense that she's very quite vocal on matters Jammu and Kashmir, and she knows a lot of issues about being a. And congratulations to Aarti that she recently obtained the domicile certificate for Jammu and Kashmir. Congratulations on that, Aarti. I hope everybody is able to hear me clearly and there is no issue. Aarti, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, great. Okay. So the next participant today is Arif Ajakia. He's a London-based human rights activist, basically from Pakistan, but he's quite vocal on a lot of issues concerning human rights and other issues relating to India-Pakistan relations. We are just awaiting him to join us. As and when he joins, I'll introduce him once again. Then we have Ilchat Asan Kokbore. He is the director of Chinese Affairs Department in the Uyghur World Congress, World Uyghur Congress, and he's based in Washington, D.C. He's also an activist basically for democracy and other issues relating to East Turkestan. We are very happy that he's able to join us. It's quite early in the morning in Washington, D.C., but he has been kind enough to join us today. And we have Fayaz Diju. He is the chairman and founder of Sunrise in Kashmir. It is an NGO which is working in Jammu and Kashmir today. He's also here with us today. Thank you, Fayaz, for joining. And we'll be joined by Yana Mirchandani, who is again a very vocal political analyst and a social activist. She basically alternates between Srinagar and Mumbai. She will be joining us. She has been having some technical issues, so she will be joining us in just a while. She's just getting it rectified. So thank you all of you for joining here today. Let me first, the subject of discussion today will be, basically the comparative, the topic of the discussion will be rhetoric versus reality, comparing human rights and development in Jammu and Kashmir and PoK, which is also the subject of our report that we are releasing today. So let me just show you the cover of the report, and then talk a little bit about the report, so that you know what we are talking about. Are you able to see the cover of the report that I have just put up on the screen? Yeah. Okay. So basically, this report we have prepared it over the last 2-3 months. We have been studying Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Basically, this the region called as Kashmir has been a very contentious issue between the two nations for over 7 decades since both of them got independence. And both the countries have been in a continuous warfare, either physically on the ground in the form of military warfare or in the form of information warfare that has been going on for the last decades now. And they have fought at least 3 wars and one short-term battle in Kargil over the last seven decades over this territory. And we all know that it's quite a sensitive issue too, in the sense that this issue kind of defines the relationship between India and Pakistan, which are neighbors, and which was one country under the British rule at some point in time in the past. So this report is called as the Human Lives Matter because it's all about human lives. It's not just about politics and geopolitics. We need to care about human lives here. So it's Human Lives Matter, a comparative study and analysis of human development and human rights in Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan. We are including Gilgit-Baltistan because it is also part of the contention that that we are dealing with on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir today. It is part of the state of Jammu. Was originally part of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now it is Gilgit-Baltistan is part of the Union Territory of Ladakh in India. So Law and Society Alliance is a Delhi-based think tank, but we have activities all over the country. We have activities in Mumbai, Hyderabad, and other places also. We have volunteers in Bangalore, Chennai, in all over the country almost. So we did this study, and then we decided to release this report. Basically, by the study and assessment of it's a comparative study basically on, and we have relied mostly on open source information that is available, relying on reports from United Nations agencies and also from institutions which are both in India and Pakistan, both statutory institutions and non-governmental organizations that have been doing some work in this part of the world. And on also media reports that dealt with some of these human rights issues and human development indices. We both, besides mapping and assessing, the report also gives a snapshot of various, research that have been carried out by different stakeholders on the issue of Kashmir in this region. Basically, this report is an attempt to present a broader picture of the economic conditions prevailing in these two regions that are that are under contention between India and Pakistan. So the research maps, compares, and analyzes a combination of dynamic and relatively static incidents and indicators, including governance, ethnicity, language, and culture, human rights conditions, and also the laws and legislations that basically deal with these two regions in these two countries, which also sometimes lead to human rights abuses. So based on these analysis of these four categories, the report subsequently draws inferences and makes observations. And we have also analyzed the last 1 year since the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A of the Indian Constitution and the bifurcation of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories. This is broadly the report's content. I have shared the report with the panelists earlier, so they'll be able to debate it. For others, I think if you are interested in getting a copy of this report, please do send a mail to Law and Society Alliance @gmail.com. I'll just drop the email ID in the chat box so that you are able to access it and send a mail. Once you send a mail, we'll be more than happy to share the report with you. As I said earlier, we'll be going in the alphabetical order. We have Aarti Tikku. I now request her to make a presentation. But before that, just some administrative announcements here. I request all the other listeners in the event to mute their microphone so that there is no disturbance when the participants speak. And also, if there are bandwidth issues, please do shut down your video so that the audio is available and you're able to clearly hear what the speakers are speaking. Now, may I request Aarti Tikku to make a presentation? Please. I'm just unmuting you, Aarti. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Bipindra, for giving me this opportunity to speak to all the experts on Gilgit-Baltistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. I have not been to POJK, I have not been to Gilgit-Baltistan, so all my information is in a way from Pakistani sources, and it is from some international sources. In fact, the kind of study that you have done leaves very little scope for anyone else to show any expertise on POJK today. I think you've done a commendable job. There is exhaustive and comprehensive information on all the aspects related to POJK Gilgit-Baltistan. But I want to start with one important study which I have been following for the last decade or so, and this study has been done not by any Pakistani source, not by any Indian source. It is an index which is measured by Freedom House. If you look at all their reports that have come in the last decade, I am not sure, I haven't really studied what their previous reports were, but if you look at the reports that came out in the last decade, you will notice that year after year after year, Freedom House Index has said that POJK, Gilgit-Baltistan, are not free. Even though the fact is that Jammu and Kashmir, India's Jammu and Kashmir, which included Ladakh until last year, it, according to Freedom House, was partly free. And I think, as an Indian, I would take objection to saying that it's partly free, because Jammu and Kashmir, given its constitutional status in the Constitution of India, you can't really say that it's partly free. But I'm still okay with this status, because if you really look at J&K in the last 30 years, the fact is that cross-border terrorism, which was exported by Pakistan and continues to be exported by Pakistan, it did curb certain freedoms. It did curb certain normal features which you experience in the rest of the country in India. And therefore, some institutions may not have worked optimally. Some indicators may not have been as good as they are in other states of India. But when you compare it to POJK and Gilgit-Baltistan, where Pakistan, sort of brags about boasts that they've been normal, they've got everything going, there is no issue, there is no dissent, there is no law and order problem, there is no terrorism. And in fact, this is one of the major points that Pakistan supporters, separatists in Kashmir often make, that Gilgit-Baltistan, POJK, nobody has, raised any issues with Pakistani dispensation. Nobody has questioned the Pakistani government. There is no revolt. There is no rebellion, so to say, against the Pakistani government in POJK and Gilgit-Baltistan. Whereas there is an indigenous or local native rebellion in Kashmir against the Indian state. So if that is correct, that POJK has been completely normal and it is a functional democracy under Pakistan, so-called democracy, then Freedom House should not have made this point that it is not free. So why does Freedom House say that POJK and Gilgit-Baltistan are not free? And why do they say that J&K under India is partly free? Well, a few things. One, that regardless of what Pakistan has been doing in Jammu and Kashmir in not just the last 30 years, but in the last 7 decades, we know that Pakistan tried to invade Jammu and Kashmir 4 times through a conventional war. We also know that in the last 30 years, Pakistan has been trying to annex Jammu and Kashmir through a proxy war, which is cross-border terror, which is exporting jihadi ideology, which is also exporting Wahhabi, Deobandi, Jamaat-e-Islami, radical Islamism into Kashmir. So my point is that uh, despite all these things, Jammu and Kashmir in India has had elections. Jammu and Kashmir in the last 70 years has seen tremendous development. You look at all the economic indicators. In fact, this is one issue that I have raised several times, that uh, whenever foreign journalists come to Kashmir, and why just foreign journalists? If anyone goes to Kashmir and thinks that they will get to see a Palestine-like situation economically, they will get to see a West Bank kind of situation or Gaza kind of situation, because everybody has been drumming this point that Kashmir is a conflict zone, it's a war zone. And yet, what you see in Kashmir, what you see in the valley, is a very good, very high standard of living. One, second, you will see enormous wealth. There is not a Kashmiri who does not own a house. There is not a Kashmiri who does not own some amount of land. There may be, people in terms of some people may have large amount of property, and some people may have very little, but that still does not mean that Kashmir has turned poor, or Kashmir has been bankrupted, or has been deprived of any of the facilities, any of the avenues, any of the resources that other states in India have not, been granted. In fact, J&K, despite the conflict, has had no serious poverty issues, whether it's Baramulla or whether it's Srinagar or Anantnag. You will see palatial bungalows. You will see really lush green fields. You will not see the kind of poverty that you see in Madhya Pradesh, the kind of poverty that you see in Uttar Pradesh, in Bihar, in Odisha, in Jharkhand, in Chhattisgarh. You will not see that kind of poverty in Kashmir. And this is despite the fact that Pakistan has, continuously attacked Kashmir. It has continuously disrupted the economic activity from, especially from 1989-90. We have had long stretches of curfews. We have had long stretches of lockdowns. We have had long stretches of protests initiated and imposed by militant groups, by terror groups, and by separatists. Even last year, after the initial communication blockade, when Kashmir was opened and restrictions were lifted, the terror groups like Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, they imposed not just a social lockdown, but an economic lockdown. They did not want shopkeepers to open the shops. They did not want businesses to run their businesses. They did not want the haji walas, the boat walas, or anybody whose life depends on tourism to function normally. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that despite all the attempts that Pakistan's army, Pakistan's spy agency has made to disrupt Kashmir, has made to destroy Kashmir economically, socially, financially, Kashmir has thrived. The institutions have still worked, even if not at an optimal level, they have worked. And now coming to human rights violations. Yes, there have been human rights violations in Jammu and Kashmir in the last 30 years, because there is a law and order situation. simultaneously with a security situation, with an proxy war, with cross-border terror. There have been excesses committed by the state, by the Indian state. But if you compare those excesses, those human rights abuses, with the abuses and the deprivations in POJK and Gilgit Baltistan, Jammu and Kashmir will come out with flying colors, because uh, despite the proxy war, J&K still, the armed forces, Jammu and Kashmir police, the human rights commissions, India has given access to Amnesty International, India has given access to Human Rights Watch, India has given access to all kinds of NGOs, all kinds of groups, to observe, to monitor, and to study the human rights situation in J&K. But if you really look at POJK, very little information has come from POJK and Gilgit Baltistan. Fortunately, last year's Human Rights Commission report, which came from Pakistan, was scathing. It's scathing against the Pakistani state. And I think I would like to, quote a little bit from that report, because it is important to note that this document has come not
Aarti,
from, yeah.
just a second. Can you just start your video, because we can't see your video here. If you can just start it and then continue, please.
Can you see me now? Yeah.
1 second.
Can you see me now? Can you see me now? Can you see me now?
Not yet, Aarti. Yeah, now I can see you. Yeah. Great.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to just quote a little bit from this report, because this report has not come from India. It has not, often people reject in India's reports or India's sources, and often people in Pakistan, their separatist supporters in Kashmir, they often say that they rubbish all the source-based news reports, uh, or any information that comes from Indian media. So I want to point out what the Pakistan's Human Rights Commission has said uh, on its own, without any cajoling or coaxing from any Indian source. A couple of points. One, I think they said why my video was missing, because I was trying to access it from my computer. So you will have to excuse me.
Aarti, once you are ready, please continue.
Hello?
Yeah, please continue, Aarti. Yes.
Yeah. So the report said, and this is Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, the year 2019 will be remembered for the systematic curbing of political dissent by various means, constraints to the freedom of the mainstream media, digital surveillance, and the over-regulation of social media spaces. And then it goes on to say that curbs on freedom of opinion and expression continue to escalate. It's more difficult to speak or write openly, if at all, on sensitive issues such as enforced disappearances, or to criticize state policy or security agencies in areas like Balochistan, Gilgit Baltistan, and Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So that should tell us that there has been dearth of information coming out of Gilgit-Baltistan in mainstream media of Pakistan, in mainstream media of India as well. We have hardly seen any reports. I think years ago NDTV did they went on a secret mission and they got some documentary evidence of the kind of abuses that Gilgit-Baltistan and POJK have been suffering at the hands of the Pakistani army. And I'm glad that you have done a comparative study. There are open sources which have information, but the mainstream media has completely failed in highlighting it. Or the entire focus of not just the Indian media but international media, for example, is on Indian Kashmir, where Pakistan has been exporting cross-border terror for the last 3 decades. Nobody has ever, in the international press, questioned the Pakistani military about the excesses, about the abuses and violations that have been committed in their part of, J&K and Gilgit-Baltistan, which is not really their part; it's occupied. So I'm going to end on this because I know that there are experts from POJK and Gilgit-Baltistan. I would let them speak on the human rights violations in those areas. The only thing that I would like to add here is that despite certain human rights accesses in J&K, in Indian J&K, the massive number of human rights violations that have been committed by Pakistan sponsored terrorists and also by Pakistan backed separatist and militant groups in Kashmir. That fact is completely missing. That fact has never been highlighted by the mainstream media in Delhi or international press. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to check if Arif Ajakia has joined. I see a few names here which we are not able to identify. Is Arif around? Okay. So we'll move on to the next speaker. We have Priyas Diju, who is the founder and chairman of Sunrise in Kashmir. He is based out of Kashmir, so I request him to make his presentation. Priyas, the time is yours.
Hi everyone. I hope I am audible.
Yes, perfectly audible. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, just to correct everyone, I am no expert here. I am just a small self-proclaimed social activist. I try to do a little bit of social activism, and that's all. We have big guns here, and I just don't know. We're talking about big things like Gilgit, Baltistan, and we're talking about PoK occupied J&K. I thought Bipindra, I was supposed to talk about Jammu and Kashmir. It's the place where I've been born and brought up, and so I'll start with Kashmir, and with reference to our first eminent expert here, Aarti Tikkuji. She spoke about Kashmir economy. She said that कश्मीर में सब सही है, लोगों के पास बंगले हैं, yes. It's not something to do with today. It's been centuries that लोगों के पास यहाँ बंगले हैं. Everybody has a house, unlike places like Delhi or any other place we talk about. Everybody has a house, yes. But are people happy inside the houses? Like since August, people are inside their houses without internet. Are they happy inside the big bungalows? I don't think so. Anyways, coming back to that later, I don't have a presentation. I am just going to speak whatever I've been, I've gone through your report. I've read your report. It's a commendable job. It's a good job that you've done in your report. I just fail to understand, did Aarti Tikkuji missed or she forgot to speak about the education system in Kashmir, how it is deteriorating day by day? I think she forgot. Otherwise, it is a very important thing to talk about. The education system here, since August, children have not been to schools, they've not been to colleges, they've not been to universities. What kind of an impact is it going to put on all the children here? Like, it's been a year, absolutely a year, since last August 2019, and it's August 2020. not even a single child has been to his school or his college. They're all home. They're on a big vacation. Does anybody, think it's a very important thing that, we should actually look on? Uh, Property issues, poverty issues. Yes, absolutely. Like if compare Kashmir to places like Jharkhand, Orissa, Bihar, and Madhya Pradesh for that matter. Yes, people here in Kashmir are doing much, much better than that. Like if we talk about recent 2014 floods when like everything was devastated, I can give you a reference about Kerala. Kerala had a flood and the donations started pouring from across the country. Like I run an NGO, we did a little bit from Kashmir, and from Kashmir to Kerala, uh, we did do something which was like, in our capacity, and we tried to send whatever we could. So when there were floods in Kashmir, yes, Kashmir rose again. And then, there were those social media hashtags, Kashmir will rise again. Yes. You talk about any year, you talk about any incident. Yes, Kashmir has always been up. People have always been good. There have been no cases of poverty. There have been no cases of people sleeping hungry or people sleeping on the footpaths or people sleeping under the red lights. No, there has not been any cases like that. But I think you should compliment Kashmir for that, or you should compliment Kashmiri people for that, for being good and being able to take care of themselves against all odds. Coming back to human rights violations, I don't know about Gilgit and Baltistan. I will definitely get back to you when I go there and when I see the place there. But as far as now, I talk about Kashmir and I talk about the human rights violations here. Are we by any chance trying to say which place is the lesser evil? Like Gilgit Baltistan में ज़्यादा human rights violation हो रहा है या कश्मीर में ज़्यादा हो रहा है? Are we trying to compare it? Any sort of human rights violation is not a good thing. Be it Gilgit Baltistan, we have humans there. They're human lives. Human lives matter. Isn't that theme of the entire talk show? And then there are human lives which are in Kashmir, which are in Jammu, which are in places like far-flung places. Don't do they matter? Yeah, of course they matter. So I think it is not very right to compare the two places के human rights violation कहाँ पे कम हो रहा है कहाँ पे ज्यादा हो रहा है. Human rights violation कश्मीर में भी हो रहा है. Then there are reasons क्यों हो रहा है. फिर आप security का नाम बोलें, फिर आप किस चीज का नाम बोलें, that's a secondary question. There are people who are being killed by unidentified gunmen. There are young boys whose throats are slitted, and there are women who are raped by unidentified men. Hello? I think there's some disturbance in the voice. I can hear
No,
my
we're
voice.
able to hear you. No, I think that must be some issue at your end. But otherwise, we are able to clearly hear you. Not an issue. Please go ahead. Because we are able to hear you clearly, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I was there was probably some echo, so I was just listening
The
to my
echo
own.
must be at your end. Have you opened two systems, two devices? Then there is an echo. Otherwise, it's fine. We are able to hear you clearly. Please go ahead. Continue. Yes. Yes, please continue. I think Fia seems to have logged off. 1 second. Fayaz, please continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have to excuse me because I am from Kashmir and this is a place where we do not have an access to 4G internet from August 2019. So I'm trying to struggle and I'm trying to do my best on a 2G network. I'm trying to move around and just trying to catch the best possible spot for me so that I can get a better network, better connectivity.
Yeah. Please go ahead. We are able to
Yeah.
hear you now.
Yeah. So I was talking about, I am a social activist. I would confine myself to things which come under my domain. So if you talk about human lives matter, human lives matter? Yes, of course, human lives matter. And there are a lot of things where human lives matter. Has anybody ever thought, has this thought ever come across to you? Like if we go around my country, my India, if we go around, there's not even a single place like RP Pikku madam spoke about places like Jharkhand, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh. You talk about Odisha, any place, you talk about any place. Every place has a sports academy. Because personally, I believe sports is a religion. Okay, it's above any religion that you talk about. Sports is a religion. Has ever anybody thought about that? Why Kashmir doesn't even have one simple, small, proper sports academy here? What will the children do here? What are they gonna do? There's not even a single sports academy here. And if there is a sports academy, probably, I would not say 100%, but at least 50 to 60% of youth who are alienated right now, who would probably engage themselves towards better sports activities. And because once you are in sports, you automatically become a disciplined person, isn't it? So if you are in sports, you probably cut down on all those things. You probably cut down on stone pelting. You probably cut down on different things. So if you do not do stone pelting, if you do not indulge in militancy or terrorism, I think, we can say that, human rights violations would anyways come down. मैं आप पे पत्थर नहीं मारूंगा तो आप रिएक्ट नहीं करेंगे ना. सो मेरे को पत्थर ना मारने के लिए वजह दीजिए ना. उल्टा you are giving me reasons to throw stones. Why?
Fayaz, you want somebody to respond to that, or you're paused? That's why I'm asking.
No. The screen is just paused. I'm sorry.
And that is okay. You just continue and speaking. We are able to hear you clearly. Not an issue. As you said, there are issues with your broadband. Fayaz, you have muted yourself.
Hello?
Yeah, continue, please. Please continue. Once you have spoken, I'll give Aarti a chance to reflect your statements. Fayaz? Fayaz, are you there? Yeah, please. Please continue, Fayaz.
Vipindra, he's left the meeting. He's not online.
No, I can see him here. I can see his video online.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah, I can see him. But, Fayaz, please continue. Okay. Okay, Fayaz, we'll come back to you again when there is a question and answer session, right? Okay. I now request Yana is raising her hands. Yana, you want to speak? Yana, you want to speak?
Yes.
Please?
Yes.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I just want to respond to my friend Fayaz. Fayaz, is it? Fayaz Diju.
Yeah, easier.
See, he's right in saying that in Kashmir, people have been living. Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Yes. So people have been living in bungalows for centuries, but for decades they've also been living in a conflict. So we can't undermine the fact that people have been living in a conflict in Kashmir. Inside their houses, they are unhappy. Yes, because many things that have been promised have been stalled. A lot of development projects have been stalled. Some projects have been stalled since the year 2003. Like the pier that was going to be made on the Jhelum River. There were 2 or 3 of them. Stalled since 2003. So many road developments, road construction stalled since 2006. So the reason of these promises not being fulfilled, these developments not being completed, and people being frustrated, people being unhappy, is because there was a lot of corruption. So the funds are released from the center. They reach the state. the erstwhile state, when it used to be a state. The release from the center, they reach the state, but they get embezzled once they reach the state. They're not being used for public benefit. And that is what the center had a problem with. That the bonding between the center and the public was never being cemented, because whatever the center wanted to do for the public was not reaching the public because of people sitting in the middle to embezzle it. There are no people, there are Kashmiris who were embezzling, the corrupt. So that is why the government has taken certain decisions. Now, certain people are confusing the Awam by saying, look, we've been humiliated. Our identity being taken away. You know, I don't want to go on and on about this, because this session that we have is about comparison of PoK and JNK. But just to answer my friend, that is the only reason I'm giving him these answers. Another thing he said was, there has been no poverty in Kashmir. I mean, why is he joking? On a scale of, as far as I remember, before we converted into a union territory, we were out of 28 states, we were at 24 in terms of GDP. We problems. He's saying that he runs an NGO. Well, even I run an NGO by the name of All JK Youth Society. I'm sure he's aware of it, because we have a friend who's common. That's what I heard. So 4,000 unemployed youth who've been unemployed since much before August 5th, 2019. Professional, highly educated medical professionals. They are medical graduates. 4,000 of them. Saying we did this for the past 4 years, and we now some of them are unfortunately applying as peons in colleges and schools. Now again, you're going to blame the government for this. The abrogation just happened last year, but they are saying they have not had a job since they graduated and came back to the state. And why is that so? There is a shortage of jobs in our state. The reason being that we are only depending on government jobs, unlike the other states. We are not allowing foreign investors to come. We used to have so many. We didn't have so many laws that were implemented in the rest of the country, but not implemented in our state. So many of them that it was almost. Why would anyone want to come there and invest and generate jobs for us if at the end of the day we're going to say, okay, you're done your job, now get lost. You can't be one of us. You can't be one of us. You can't have a domicile here. You can't live here forever. You can't even buy a property here. You can only lease out. If you're going to give such conditions, why are any private investors going to come and invest in Kashmir the way they do in other states? So, and then we complain about not having jobs. Jobs are possible if there is a proper symphony between government jobs, government-created jobs, and private sector jobs. That's when the talented youth of Kashmir. Let me tell you that we are the most talented. I think most of the Kashmiris are topping their universities, but unfortunately they are jobless when they go back to their state. And the reason is because there is a shortage of private investment there, which again the government had a problem with, and that was one of the reasons they abrogated the 370. And then he spoke about rapes, unidentified gunmen. Yes, can he deny the fact that there is a lot of personal vendetta being taken out? You know, in business and other, you know, in between relatives. Let me finish. There is a lot of personal vendetta being removed, and a lot of criminals take advantage of this, this restlessness in the minds of people. They take advantage of this conflict issue, and rapes happen, and the blame is put on the army men. Unidentified gunmen shoot and go, and then it is said that oh look, army men shot him. You know, these personal vendettas are removed and the blame is put on the basically because some people are resisting. So that sentiment of resistance is being taken advantage of. Criminals are taking advantage of the sentiment of resistance and getting away with their crimes. He's right in that part. And again, now he talks about 4G. Isn't the 4G being started again in phases? Why was it started in Udhampur and Ganderbal? Because they're comparatively peaceful. Because there doesn't seem to be any resistance or any conflict or any conflict-driven sentiments coming out of these places. People seem to be going towards progress, prosperity, and seem to be thinking positive things and seem to be thinking of moving forward. And they don't seem to be giving any, refuge to any kind of anti-national activities. And that is why the government, that, you are not thinking of Muslims who live in Bihar, you're not thinking of Muslims who live in UP. Excuse me, but I live in Andheri West and there is a Millat Nagar here, which is a Muslim area, and there's 4G working beautifully over here. Okay, so this is all nonsense. Why would the government want to punish an area just because it's a Muslim majority area? That doesn't make any sense. The government has only, it is definitely very inconvenient. For more than half of the year, I am in Srinagar. And believe me, yes, I have been so frustrated at times that I have picked up stone in my garden and thrown it at the wall. Yes, it is very frustrating. But then I understand that it is to save lives. But yes, it has gone on for too long. And this is definitely something that we negotiate about. But this cannot, by saying that we don't have 4G in certain sections of Kashmir, we cannot say that we are worse than PoK. Just because we don't have 4G in certain sections of Kashmir. It is frustrating, but according to the government, it's a necessity. And I would like to tell Mr. Diju, that it is the local administration, security administration of Kashmir that had decided. It was not the center. The center, Mr. Amit Shah openly said in Rajya Sabha, whenever the local administration tells us we'll release the internet, we are not holding it. But it was the local security administration that decided to hold on to it. It was the locals. Who's in the Jammu Kashmir police? Who are joining the army? It is mostly local Kashmiris. So they are the ones who are giving the input that no, it must be shut for a little more time. It should be shut for a little longer. These are the people who are saying it. So, we can't just blame the government about this. And now he's talking about sports complex. Well, apparently, Suresh Raina has played for the international cricket team without having a sports academy in JNK. Apparently, Tajamul Islam, she's a girl, she's only 11 or 12 years old, she's being written about everywhere. She has won so many awards. She is so young and so talented. She's being spoken of everywhere globally. She's a talent. Apparently, you've not heard of people like them. When you have a passion, you follow it. You don't look for stones to pick up and throw just because you don't have a sports academy next to your house. You follow your passion. You have a huge country. You know that there's a conflict going on in your union territory, and until all this is settled, there is a lot unsettled. But you have a huge country, it's entirely your country. You can always go somewhere else, learn and come back and teach in your country, or propagate it and continue it in your state. There is nobody stopping you from doing that. And finally, now I'd like to come to PoK. I mean, if it's okay, or if my time is up, I don't know, because this was just an answer to
before you come to PoK, can I?
Fiyaz, one second. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. No, I'll come back to you.
1 minute.
I'll give you an opportunity.
I cannot hold it.
No,
I
please,
cannot hold it.
No, please control yourself.
Okay.
Rana, please continue and finish your PoK point, and then I'll go back to Aarti and before I come back to Fiyaz, because Aarti will have to respond to what Fiyaz had said earlier, and then Fiyaz will get the opportunity to reply.
Sure. So I would like to talk about now talking about PoK. I'm sorry, Aarti ma'am, I missed a little bit of your what you said. I don't know if you've already covered this point. I would like to touch the topic of tourism. Okay, because now the entire area, which I consider even that part as part of India, but whatever, the entire Himalayan region is blessed, well endowed with natural beauty. So we are a tourism-based economy. That's what we were intending to be always. Now, so tourism is our main sort of, source of income, which definitely has taken a very bad hit after the 370 abrogation. In fact, I think it has taken a hit since the Pulwama attack. And after that, then the abrogation of 370, and after that, then the pandemic. So I think it's according to the report by the Kashmir Chamber of Industry, there's been, as on January 2020, there's been a loss of over 1,500 crores, and I'm only talking about tourism. So by now it must be more than that, must be 5,000 crores or something, and I'm only talking about tourism sector. The other sectors, I'm not talking about the Apple industry. This is just the tourism. Let's take maybe a little more than 1,500 crores, maybe 3,000 crores by now is the loss that the tourism industry has faced since the abrogation. But they're not counting the time that actually tourists had stopped coming after the Pulwama attack. See, nobody wants to travel to a place where there are security issues, or where there's political instability, where there's threat to life, or and now because of the internet problems, because of the 2G, the credit cards are not working. So obviously, tourism has taken a hit in our Kashmir, Jammu Kashmir. But we still have a silver lining. We have a ray of hope. We know that at the end of all this, our economy will be restored. We've seen a 36% drop in violence. We have seen that fewer people are joining militancy ranks. Is doing its best. And we've also seen that now 4G started, So hopefully, when all this is, get back to our economies, get back to being the tourism hub that we always were. But now, let's talk about PoK. They have all that Ped, Pahad, Jharna that we have, but do they have any tourism? They don't, and they absolutely can't have any tourism. And there are many reasons for this. First is, give me a second. The first reason is that let's talk about the infrastructure, the tourism infrastructure. For example, we have the State of Art Gondola, which is at Gulmarg, Afarwat station. What do they have in the name of a cable car? They have this Arankel or something, which is like this shaky, made of wood, and they use rusted shutters as the safety lock. Okay, and it's like a suicide mission getting on that. They have that in some place. Another thing is they don't maintain, like how we have maintained Shankaracharya temple, we maintained the Hazrat Bal, we maintained all these monuments so beautifully. There is no maintenance. For example, you look at the Red Fort in Muzaffarabad, there is absolutely no maintenance of any of their monuments of historical importance. I'm not talking out of rhetoric. There are people who visited there as tourists, and it's them who speak. Apparently, there is a shortage of hotels and places to stay, and a lot of tourists have been seen sleeping on the roads. They come there to escape the hot weather from the rest of Pakistan, and there are no hotels for them to stay at. These are some of the problems. Another thing is the airport. How will the tourists even come there? They have an airport where the last flight flew in 2005 when they were trying to, do some rescue operations when the earthquake happened. And let me tell you, since 2005, there are still some people living in tents. Their houses have not been, they've not been rehabilitated yet. They have not been given any help in repairing their homes. Since 2005 until 2020, there are still people living in tents after that 2005 dreadful earthquake. Okay, there are no flights. There is just an airport, and there are no flights going in and out of that airport. Whereas we at Srinagar have both flights. We're blessed. Okay, and we have airports at other places in JNK too. So we are blessed. Now the other thing is, when a tourist travels to a place, okay, it is not just the Ped, Pahad, Jharna. The tourist also wants to soak in a bit of the culture. Now, what does PoK have in the name of Kashmiri culture? There's nothing. There's only 8% people who speak Kashmiri language there, first of all. And I'll tell you how those 8% even speak. In her book, I've written the name of her book here. There's a Pakistani writer who writes in her book. Just give me a second, I'll just tell you her name. She writes in her book that when the partition happened and when the accession happened and all these things were happening, about 40,000 families went into PoK. Just give me a second. 40,000 families migrated to PoK thinking that they would be happier there because it's, it comes under Pakistan or whatever. So they migrated to that part. And then after that, when they saw the condition in which they were living, they wanted to come back to the Indian side. But because of the strict, visa regulations and all this, immigration regulations of India, they're frustrated, they're not able to come back. So they started this entire thing of militancy, anti-India, campaigning and all that, because anyway, that's a separate story. So it is because of these 40,000 families at that point who had migrated that side, that the language of Kashmiri is still a little bit relevant, as in 8%. The rest of the culture there is what we call the Potahari culture, which is like Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistani Punjabi culture. So it's like 90% people there speak, Pakistani Punjabi or Urdu. And there are other languages spoken like Pahari, Hindko, and all of that. So Kashmiri is spoken by, I think 8 is a big figure, maybe less than 7.7 or something. Very few Kashmiri speakers there. That's point number 1. Point number 2, you talk about cuisine. A tourist, when he visits, he wants to taste the food of that place. Okay, having the what is Kashmiri food? We have Rogan Josh. They have the Punjabi style balti gosht. We have monjhak. We have sochal. We have all these dishes. They don't have any of that. Khatte bengan. They haven't even heard of these dishes. Okay, we have Vazwan and they have that, what do they call that? Punjabi style masala ran. So this is like basically going there is like going to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. It doesn't even feel like Kashmir. Now we talk about art and culture. Okay, we have an art academy. It promotes, our dance. We have Sufi musical nights. We have our dance forms like Rauf and Dumhal. These are promoted. These have been preserved up to now. We have cultural events that tourists can be part of and get the feel of Kashmiri culture. What do they have there? Nothing. They don't have any culture. The festivals that we celebrate, look at the number of festivals we celebrate. Apart from the regular Muslim, the festivals of Eid al-Milad, Eid al-Fitr, the Ashura, apart from the Muslim festivals, we also have Hemis, we have the Tulip Festival, we have the Saffron Festival, we have the Shikara Festival. What do they have? Nothing. They don't even have Shikaras there. So that is not even, I don't even believe that it's a part of Kashmir, first of all. Okay, because they have not bothered to maintain anything that is Kashmirian out there. In fact, what I've heard is that they have on purpose not tried to bring the people into mainstream, not maintain the culture of the people, not try to give them employment because they want these people to become militants. They want these people to become mujahideen. They want these people to fight the holy war against India. And that is the reason they're making sure that the young people of PoK are not part of any mainstream and are not getting any kind of employment. And that is why even the tourism sector is not being developed. That is a okay. And a lot of tourists flock to buy these things. We have Kashmiri brand of coming. So because of pandemic, someone there are who have this. So and the cultural differences between PoK and that and over there has This is one thing that the people whatever, and then because of the so understanding of how the government
Yana? Yana? Yeah. Yeah. Make your last point and then we'll come back to you again, since it's going to be a debate. Yeah.
so that's how
Arti, if you want to make your comment. Yana, are you done?
I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah. Arti, please make your comments. We want to respond to Fayaz if you want to.
Yeah. I think a couple of points. One point, I think overall, I think Fayaz did make some valid points, and as
Faz, not Fayaz, Faz. Thank you.
He did make some valid points, and I think youth should be a priority of the government in J&K as well as at the center. Having said that, I think I took a strong objection to one point that he made. He said that, give me a reason not to pelt stones. If you agree that J&K has not had the kind of poverty that Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand or Odisha or Madhya Pradesh has, then there you would say that people in all these poor states with very poor infrastructure, with hardly any jobs, with massive level of poverty, they have a greater reason to pelt stones, a greater reason to subvert the Indian democracy. They have a greater reason to be on the streets and to kill Indian armed forces. I think that is a completely, I would say, it is absurd and illogical and irrational argument to make, because we are a democratic republic. We believe in law, and we, as this whole debate itself is about law and society. When you start making that kind of an argument, you are in a serious slippery slope, because you are in a way justifying violence. So I think we should refrain from making such statements. Second, the fact that yes, Kashmiri people should be credited with the fact that they can look after themselves. Yes, they can. But the point is that 90% funding to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, came from the center. and it did not, the revenue generations in J&K were abysmally poor in the last 30 years, ever since Pakistan sponsored terrorism, attacked economy, attacked tourism sector. In fact, Yana made very, very powerful and valid arguments, except the fact that, tourism has not been hit badly only in the last 1 year. Tourism in Kashmir has been hit badly for the last 30 years. I grew up in a Kashmir where it was normal to see foreign tourists in small villages and towns. I come from a very small town, but it was completely normal and common to see foreign tourists hanging out in your small, markets, or hanging out in your small gardens. The third point I really should have made, but often I forget to make, because my training is such that, the whole school of journalism that I went to, which is the classical school of journalism, was that, you have to forget yourself. You are not the story, you are not the subject. Therefore, I never talk about myself. I never talk about the biggest human rights violations that were committed and perpetrated against any people in Kashmir or Kashmiri Pandits. The entire ethnic minority of Kashmir was cleansed, and nobody has been talking about that. You have not seen that kind of human rights violation in any part of India. And yet we talk about human rights violations of terrorists. We talk about human rights violations of separatists who've been backing violence, who've been backing this stone pelting, who've been backing militant groups, who have been backing people like Zakir Musa and Burhan Wanis and Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hizbul Mujahideen. But we don't talk about normal, ordinary civilians, unarmed civilians. One, Kashmiri Pandits, and second, of course, Kashmiri Muslims. 15,000 Kashmiri Muslim civilians who were killed by terror groups in Kashmir in the last, I think, and this is the official data, killed by terror groups. And I'm not talking about, civilians who were killed in crossfiring, killed in encounters. I'm talking about civilians who were targeted by terror groups. So their human rights are completely ignored. Their human rights we've never been talking about. We don't talk about Kashmiri Pandit ethnic cleansing either. So these are the key issues. We can talk about, culture, society, and other things. But essentially, and I want to make this point too, Faiz, that yes, we are comparing PoK, Gilgit-Baltistan, and Indian Jammu and Kashmir, because the narrative of the separatists and of these human rights activists has been that, look, nobody has been talking about human rights violations in PoK and Gilgit-Baltistan. There have been no articles or documentaries in New York Times or on BBC, but there have been n number of articles and documentaries on human rights violations in J&K. Well, the fact is that civilians, Kashmiri Pandits and Muslims, their rights have been violated by Pakistan-sponsored terrorists and separatists. Therefore, the comparison is valid. Thank you.
Thank you. Fayaz, you want to respond? You said you wanted to respond to certain issues.
Yeah, of course, I would want to respond.
Please, go ahead.
Initially, when Yana started speaking, I thought we are on the same page, because I wanted to tell her, hold on, lady, hold on, we are on the same page. But then things just went like, oh my God, when did I even say these things? Or for that matter, Aarti ma'am, like, when did I even advocate for stone pelting? I was only trying to put my point like, we can and we have an option to pull them from the streets. I was not trying to tell you कि sports stadium नहीं है तो इसलिए उनको stone pelting करने दो. I am as true Indian as you are. And you should believe me on this when I'm telling you this. Right from the, childhood. You probably, if you go and check my Facebook from last 4 years, I am the only one guy in my entire clan and khandan जिसको 15 अगस्त और 26 जनवरी पे गालियां पड़ती हैं. ठीक है? So I am that only guy. So I am not trying to make a point. I just quickly want to come to Yana. She said सुरेश रैना एंड तजमुल इस्लाम. सुरेश रैना के पास स्पोर्ट्स एकेडमी नहीं थी, वो आगे चला गया. दैट इज प्रोबेबली व्हाट 1 in 10 lakh people or 1 lakh people or something like that. Tajamul Islam, do you even know Tajamul Islam's background? She's a sweet kid. I've met her. She's a very sweet kid. But let's not glamorize or over glamorize Tajamul Islam in such a way that we are trying to discourage the other athletes who are here in Srinagar, who are here in Kashmir, who do not have a platform where they can go and practice and bring laurels to our own country. ठीक है, let's admit this fact, let's call spade a spade. हमारे पास यहाँ पे स्पोर्ट्स का कल्चर नहीं है. नहीं है मतलब नहीं है, और होना चाहिए. ठीक है, स्पोर्ट्स का कल्चर हमारे पास होना चाहिए यहाँ पे. और जैसे आपने टूरिज्म की बात की, just to correct you, Kashmir is not just tourism place. Kashmir is an agricultural place. Tourism comes later. और रही बात टूरिज्म की, आप बात करें कि बाहर के लोग यहाँ नहीं आ रहे हैं, let me just correct you, it is not only बाहर के लोग यहाँ नहीं आ रहे हैं, there is something called domestic tourism, like it happens in places like Delhi, जहाँ पे weekend पे families go to places like Appugar and things like that. वहां पे कोई कनाडा से और बिहार से और छत्तीसगढ़ से और गुजरात से नहीं आता है टूरिज्म बढ़ाने के लिए. They have their own potential to create the tourism. They have their own infrastructure in places where they can generate revenue. And the same money, once the money is in the market, the same money flows. एक बार जब मार्केट में पैसा आता है ना, तो ये कहीं ना कहीं आपके पास भी पहुंच जाएगा, मेरे पास भी पहुंच जाएगा. बट मार्केट में पैसा आना चाहिए, और वो तब आएगा when we create revenues, when we create avenues for revenue generation. ठीक है. So my point, Aarti ma'am made some points that Faz made a little sense. I am so humbled. Thank you very much. I am as
Made very important and valid points.
Yeah, that I'm humbled. I'm overwhelmed that something like this comes from you. So I'm really overwhelmed that you appreciated that I made a little sense, because initially I thought I'm not speaking sense. But anyways, going on. So the other things that you mentioned, that I am not advocating for violence. No, not at all. That has never been our agenda. We never advocate for violence. My only point is that if we are able to cater to the youth, believe me, 50 to 60% of problems will be solved. Be it आज के time पे we are facing a major problem where nobody is probably focusing, which is drugs. The entire Kashmir is getting gripped in drugs, whether be it boys or be it girls. And there are girls who are like as young as 17 years or 18 years old. In a place like Kashmir, it is so, network connection is poor. Sorry. Hello?
We can hear you, Fayaz. Please continue.
Yeah, sorry, my just network. So, we need to address to the youth engagements that we call, because youth yahan pe, they've been alienated, or you call whatever term you have. We are not able to address to the youth. When I say we is me, we is you, we is our district administration, the epicenter, the center, falana, dimkana, everybody. We need to address to the youth, because that is how we are going to make a change. आप बड़ों की बात करेंगे, बूढ़ों की बात करेंगे, no, they are gone, they are living in their own, तानाशाही वाला हिसाब किताब, which doesn't work anymore. No, it doesn't work anymore. रही बात उसके बाद 4G की, ठीक है. I never again said that 4G क्यों नहीं चला रहे हो. What I meant is my connection is poor because we do not have 4G. Okay, so that is the only thing. I know security reasons हैं, बाकी चीजें हैं. और रही बात phased manner की, आप गांधरबल की बात करते हैं, मैडम प्लीज 1.5 महीने पुराना ग्रेटर कश्मीर चेक कीजिए, और वहां पे चेक कीजिए कि गांधरबल, सिर्फ ओनली गांधरबल में देयर वर 3 militant encounters. So now I am not against Ganderbal, let them enjoy the 4G. I am okay with my 2G, but my problem is that ideally we should have had this basic thing which is called a 4G internet. It is not only for me to tweet or for Aarti madam to tweet, it is for the small children who have online classes since last 4 months, since this pandemic has come into the picture. So it is the education sector, it is the economic sector, it is the shopkeepers जिसके पास customer card swipe नहीं कर सकता है. There are so many issues with it. It is not only for the social media and to save the lives. I think I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Fayaz. Thank you for that. In fact, just wanted to announce that Yana has some technical issues, so she has, network issues, so she's not able to. She has left the meeting. And Arif Ajakia is also not able to join because of some technical issue at his end. So let's move the international personality who's here, Ilchat Kokbure, who's a very personal friend of mine. Ilchat, I want you to talk about some of your issues, the Uyghur issues, and also about the subject of discussion that we have today. Ilchat, the time is yours. Please go ahead. Ilchat, once again, I'm not able to hear you. I'm going to unmute you. Okay, please now.
Okay, thank you. It was very informational and a learning opportunity. And when I was listening all experts' argument they present, and one sentence it come to my mind. It's Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family, unhappy in its own way. And we're all having trouble. We're all having problem. And I'm not expert on the Jammu Kashmir, but I was thinking, if we can stop China, the backer of the Pakistani government, and the Kashmir Jammu issue should be peacefully and find a solution, India with Pakistan, or let the local people make a decision, give them the full freedom. From the report, all human rights, all human lives matter. I did browse it through. It was a good report, especially when it compares the literacy, all the life, human rights. I don't want to say that India is did better, but if that report within my browse, it is a big achievement for the India. I mean, the government should show what they achieved, and then let the people to get benefit, and then let the people to choose how to live their life in which side. And that's my thought after I received that report, and also listening today's this debate experts presentation. And it come to me, as we are Uyghur, and everyone knows now, most of us is social activists and journalists, and I actually did some research when I get that meeting announcement for each experts, and there some of them I followed into Twitter. I like their ideas, and I learned a lot. I'm continue well learn, and Uyghur issue now is become a world attention. That's because since our country, East Turkestan, was occupied by the Chinese, some of our intellectual, some of our businessmen or leaderships trusted the Chinese at the time, expecting they will respect our rights, expecting they will give us chance to develop, prosper, and live a dignified life. But since I know things, since I started my study, constantly, personally, I am facing this discrimination and facing their brainwash, uh, and also prosecution. I already told my story last time in India's in the previous one discussion, and also in some journalist interview. Personally, I lost my brothers killed by Chinese mobs. My sister, elder sister, was get arrested in 2014, and then my all three sisters get disappeared. And what I know is they're in a concentration camp. My 80 years old mother's probably 82 years, with my calculation. She is despaired too. Since 2015, I got lost any contact with any one of my family members. And it's not only my story. If you look at Uyghurs, do a Google search Uyghurs, and look at everyday's news, we will find out so many kids living in US, living in Turkey, living in Europe. They're all looking for their parents, looking for fathers, mothers, some looking for their husbands, ladies looking for husbands, some men's looking for their wives, some is looking for their children, some looking for their grandparents. We are in a constant repeating history tragedy of looking for our dear one. And now it's a with State Department's officials, Mr. Mike Pompeo saying we are facing 21st century human civilization's uh, humiliation because Uyghur, more than 2 million, probably 3 to 4 million, and in concentration camp, in jail, in the forced labor camps, and doing some slave work. Others, all is in full surveillance. Full surveillance. And just one example, 2 days ago, in the capital city of East Turkestan, Urumqi, because of the Chinese virus lockdown, it started from 15th of July. The whole city, whole East Turkestan was in lockdown. People was not allowed to come down from their higher floor, not to visit anyone, not go to the street, even not allowed to go out from their house. And all the house was sealed by the government official. And had some famine already. I saw one video, one Uyghur mother is telling, it's in a village, telling her kids, this grass can make a dumpling. We don't have any other food. Today we need to eat grass dumpling. This grass can be it and tasty. What's a life in this world for Uyghur? What is a life? Eating grass. And because of this lockdown in the capital city of Urumqi, in East Turkestan of Urumqi, the people at the night opened their window and shouted to the outside. They were thinking it's at night. And in the house, they just opened the window. No one will know it. But in the second day, the Chinese government put an announcement and say, we disciplined who is instigated this shouting, and we have technical way to can find anyone who is instigating like this shouting or slandering the government, etc. And I believe that's true because they installed all cameras even in the house of some people, mostly the Uyghurs' house. They have the camera inside the house. We don't have any privacy, even in our bed, because the Chinese keep sending their cadgers to live in Uyghurs' house. Some of Uyghurs' house, the man was get arrested, sent to the concentration camp or jail or labor camps. And the woman with kid left in the house without any protection. And the Chinese government sending their cadgers, some is men, sharing the Uyghurs' bed, sharing their table. It's enforced. And also, recently, another video, it is Chinese government's propaganda video. issued by the Chinese local government. And in the video, they're asking Uyghur girls stand up, nominate themselves to marriage with Chinese men. I call this government-backed rape of Uyghur, because it's not encouraging ethnic mixed marriage. Why don't ask for Uyghur men to stand up to marriage with a Chinese girl? Why it's one-sided, only forcing Uyghur women to marry Chinese? This is a rape. They're attacking Uyghur from all sides, even inside from our home, inside our bed. So this is now with Harvard University Law School, two professors, one op-ed in the Washington Foreign Policy. It is a genocide. And I also encourage other people, look at the United Nations Prevention and Punishment of the Genocide Act. It was passed in 1948. And in this prevention and punishment of the genocide, it has second clause is defining what is called a genocide. It has 5 sub clause, and each of it, if we compare now's Uyghur life, it is genocide. It is a genocide. Now China, not only attacking Uyghur, attacking Hong Kongers, and they are today morning, they again arrested some legislative representatives in the Hong Kong, and they are threatening Taiwan and threatening India by not only in the India's front line, but also by supporting Pakistani government. And the Pakistani government is a corrupted, namely a democracy. I don't think they are democracy. They are still living in the Middle Age. They are using Islam as a pretext to support some terrorist group in Afghanistan, in Kashmir, to create a problem, desecrate Islam. If we want to find a solution, it's on Uyghur issue, on Kashmir Jammu issue, we need to stop China first. Because all the root, when we look at the world's problem, it's a lot of time. We will find out it's the root is in China. This is the #1 threat to the world peace, to this democratic civilization. We need to stop China first. Then I am sure we not only Uyghur issue can find a solution, Kashmir, Jammu, also North Korea and Myanmar, all. This is a big issue we need to deal with. If we want to find a solution for our own problem, we need to look at its background. What is in the back? I don't think without China's support, Pakistan can continue its this challenging way. If China, we deal with China first, Pakistan will come to the table and find a solution for Jammu and Kashmir. I don't want to go too much about that and tell my unhappy in my own way. And that's the Uyghur issue. And as India recently giving us so much support, our people were so grateful. We want India as a biggest democracy in Asia take the leadership role to counter China first, to help the people under the Chinese communist rule to accomplish the democratization of the China. If China become a democracy country, Uyghurs issue, we will find our solution. I am sure the India will find a solution for their border issue. And the Chinese communist mentality is totally different. I was reading about the India's border history, and it was already there. Already India had the agreement with Tibetan government. That was international recognized document. And only the China is creating the problem. India wasn't the border country with China in Tibet side or in our side. We are a good neighbor in the history before. We have so much cultural exchange. We have so much common. And the Buddhism even first come to Uyghurs land, Turkestan, and then it was to the China. So we have a lot of common history in that. So India needs to stand up as all social activists, journalists. My humble suggestion is focus on the big issue, the big threat. Big threat. I saw in Miss Yana's Twitter, she is specially mentioning the China threat is the number one. Yes, that's the number one threat. If we can't deal with China, we can't solve all this problem, especially in the Asia. So we need to confront them. And helping Uyghur also is helping India, helping the people oppressed. This is a solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilchat. Thank you for that. I think the Uyghur issue is a major concern that the entire world needs to wake up and take a look at. I think it's being ignored completely to kind of appease the Chinese Communist Party the world over. I think, I mean, I can state that Law and Society Alliance's support is there for your issue, Ilchat. I personally know your family story. I personally know about your sufferings. You had to escape from China to avoid this persecution, and now had to leave behind everything and finally find a place in Washington. So I extend our support to your movement and to all the issues that you've raised today. Thank you very much. And also, you made a very valid point about if you counter China, which is supporting Pakistan, I think the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, the entire Jammu and Kashmir, and when I talk about Jammu and Kashmir, can be solved. It can be resolved between the two countries with much ease. I think the CPEC program that the Chinese have started is a major hindrance. Infrastructure projects that they have invested in is a major hindrance, and I think they have done an illegal act there by meddling in between India and Pakistan. Thank you very much for your presentation. If there are any questions that the audience
Can may I ask?
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Aarti, please go ahead and ask. Yeah.
One, Mr. Kogbore, I think your address was really insightful. It gave us a perspective that we generally don't get to hear in India, because very few opportunities have been provided to Uyghurs. In fact, there was a few years ago, one of the Uyghur activists was supposed to come to India, but the last minute his visa was not approved. But I want to ask you one question. China, you said, if China becomes a democracy, the Uyghur issue will get resolved. And I think you also indicated that India's border issues will also get resolved, including that of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh with China. Uh, but what I want to understand is that, one, is there really a democratic movement within Chinese society? It could be, it could be a very discrete movement, but is it really there? And second, the cultural revolution in China, the kind of social engineering that Mao did and all his successors did in China, has influenced Chinese society in many ways. Do you feel that Chinese society is ready for a change or a shift in its not just in social structure but also in its political structure? Do you think the cultural revolution influence is now fading, or has now, because of technology and because of the kind of resistance and the kind of opposition that now is coming up in Europe, for example, or in the US? We hear Mike Pompeo, the US Secretary of State, making so many statements on a constant basis against the Chinese Communist Party. But do you think the Chinese society is also now ready for a shift?
Thank you. Uh, First question, I didn't express very well. My statement should be: if China become democratized, then the Uyghur issue, Tibet issue, and even the India's border issue can find a solution. That's my point. I don't think China's democratization immediately will solve Uyghur issue, because we, as a different nation, we want. I don't want to say all Uyghur, but majority, I believe, we want to get our independence again. And we had the independence government in before 1949. Twice we tried in the modern history, 33-1 and 44-1. The 44 East Turkestan Republic was existed until the 49 in majority of the area of the East Turkestan. So my main point is, only after the China become democratized, uh, even if it's in Chinese style democratization, then the solution can be started, dialogue can be started, and if we get our independence, then India have nothing to do with China. So India's border issue, that all will gone. And if China become a democratized and East Turkestan, Tibet get independence, Pakistan will lost their backer, and then the money lender or owner, then the Kashmir Jammu issue probably will be easy to solve uh, uh, compared to now. And for the Cultural Revolution, yes, China, since it's not only starting from Cultural Revolution, I would say China starting the 49, the communists take over the China, they started that social engineering. They brainwashed all of the people under their control, even some Uyghur. And so we have someone always felt that Chinese is good enough. And currently, the democratic movement inside China and outside China is very fragmented. And their knowledge of the democracy, from my point, probably they disagree with me. Their knowledge about the democracy is more nationalistic democracy. So they are more prefer like Singapore style of the democracy, so called, I would say. So sometimes I'm very disappointed, not that much hopeful, but as a human being, as a Uyghur, I have to deal with this, and I have to keep the hope and to fight for this democratization of the China, because only this communist go over, then we can start a new approach. If this communist still on the power, still in this type of aggressiveness, we are all in the despair situation. And the majority of the country in the world, they are taking the appeasement policy towards the China. And for example, for the Uyghur genocide, Europe is speaking, America is speaking, recently India is joined, but we didn't hear anything from Islamic world, from Turkish world. They're all silent. Not only silent, they are coping with the China, praising their policy as anti-terrorism. So in this situation, we have no choice. We have to come to with all who are against the communists to come together, try our best, first deal with the communists, and then find the next way how to approach this problem. That's my opinion. I don't know if my answer is
Yes.
giving you full
Yeah.
expected.
That was really insightful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti and Ilshad. There is a question for Yana that has come from our audience. Ronat Khatri wants to know what should the central government now do for the people of Kashmir, which will stop the youth from picking up stones. That's a question that has come from one of our participants. Yana, you want to take it up?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for your question, Ronak Khatri. What can the government do? Well, the government has just about started doing whatever it can, and for the first time, a decision of this magnanimity has been taken, and nobody had the guts to take a decision like this. A decision has been taken to stop corruption, to start pumping in investments from outside the state, a decision to protect women, a decision to develop the state, to bring it under the center. And if you know, all those union territories which are directly under the center are performing at the top 4 spots in terms of GDP, development, and per capita income and what have you. So the government wants to do the same as it did in Pondicherry, Chandigarh, for example. That is why Kashmir has been made into a union territory. Now, but unfortunately, the pandemic has come in the way of all its plans. That's one thing that is giving the benefit to a lot of anti-India speakers. See what has happened in 1 year. What has happened in 1 year? I mean, they are not willing to see that, first of all, the pandemic, and second of all, if the government's representatives are alive, then they will do some work. This is an answer I even want to give to Mr. Kokbore. He said that they should be allowed to vote. The people should be allowed to vote for what they want. Mr. Kokbore, are you aware that when we had a legislative assembly, when we had the state elections, when people like Abdullah and Mufti used to stand for elections, it was only 6%, 4% voter turnout that we used to have. So it gave the world the wrong impression. The world thought, oh, that means Kashmiris don't like India. But then when they were ousted from their positions of power, from their thrones, and then when the Sarpanchas took over, the block development elections happened. The voter turnout was over 98%. What does that show you? That Kashmiris want democracy. They don't want to separate from India. They don't want to be part of Pakistan and all that humbug. They were independent at one point of time. We were independent at one point of time, but because we were invaded by your country's best friend China, we were your country's best friend Pakistan. We were invaded. We were invaded. We had a tribal invasion. Our people were killed. Our temples were looted. Our shops were looted. Our markets were burnt down. And that is the reason our king decided that, to accede to India. And that is why there was an accession to India. Now, if you think the Kashmiris are so stupid that they would want to again go back to being independent, so again they get invaded by this rogue nation. That's not possible. The Kashmiris just want peace, progress, development, a clean governance. They want someone to hear them, to listen to them. And I think that's happening. The government has started taking its steps. It is trying to protect its representatives. As you may have heard, that rogues coming from the other side are targeting the government's representatives in Kashmir. A lot of BJP leaders are dying, are getting shot, are getting killed, are on target. Even people who speak for India, even on the social media, people like me are getting targeted. So, the government has to, keep them safe. That is also, a part of the government's agenda, to keep its own representatives in the state safe. So the government is working on that. It is trying to take the best decisions in favor of the Kashmiris. The government is not going to get anything by all these decisions that are taken. What it wants is the benefit of the people, and it's working towards it. So, inshallah, Ronak, we will be seeing, a further drop in militancy. Hopefully, we will be seeing a lot of youth coming into the mainstream soon. Inshallah, we're waiting for the pandemic to get over and for, basically normal life to get restored again.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, Ilshad, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Just for the Miss Diana's comment, just want to clarify one. China is not my country. Sorry. China is not my country. My country's name is Turkestan. It was occupied by the Chinese government. So China isn't my country, and Pakistan isn't my country's friend. It's evil's friend. And personally, just my personal opinion, I was reading India's independent movement from one UK author's for the book. My personal opinion, Pakistan's creation is a mistake in that time. It should be a whole India. That's my opinion, personal. It is a mistake. That mistake created a lot trouble for whole Islamic world. That's my personal opinion. I won't say it's Uyghurs' opinion or my organization's opinion. My personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ilshad. Yeah. There is another question that comes to my mind. Basically, since there are two women who have Kashmir roots here on the panel, I think Fayaz has dropped out because of maybe some technical issues. Yeah, okay. Otherwise, I would have asked him a question there. But yeah. So this Article 35A and its abrogation, and 1 year since then, where do you see women like Aarti and Yana? Where do you see this progressing, and how has it progressed in the last 1 year? Could you just give comments? Aarti, would you like to go first?
Sorry.
You want to go first on the Article 35A and its impact issue?
Yes. I was hoping that there would be somebody from PoK talking about. Is anyone coming in?
No, actually, Arif has some technical issues. He's not able to join. He has just messaged me, so he's not coming. Yeah.
Okay. Well, 370 and 35A. I'm sure Bipindra, you know that I took a position in support of its nullification way before the government took the decision last year on August 5th, 2019. And I want to explain it to your audience why I took that position and why I think Article 370 was the most illiberal article in the Indian Constitution. To begin with, I personally was affected to a certain extent by Article 370 because of Article 370, 35A, which is again another article which got nullified in the Constitution of India because the government reorganized the state of Jammu and Kashmir. 35A was empowering the state to legislate on its permanent residency laws. And since Article 370 had given powers to Jammu and Kashmir, which were exceptional, it granted special status to Jammu and Kashmir, and the central government, New Delhi's jurisdiction was limited only to 3 areas, which was defense, communications, and foreign affairs, which included currency. Now, how did it affect me, and why do I think it was illiberal? 35A, as I mentioned, was related to permanent residency laws. What were the permanent residency laws in Jammu and Kashmir? One, that no outsider, which meant that the people, where the state of Jammu and Kashmir could decide who was an outsider and who was an insider in J&K. No outsider was allowed to have any rights in Jammu and Kashmir, which meant that if West Pakistan refugees who had come to J&K in 1947 after the partition. By the way, before I continue my point, I would agree with Mr. Kokbore that partition was a mistake because the whole idea of two-nation theory, the whole idea of Muslim community having a Muslim state is fundamentally based on a wrong premise. And I will not go into that, but I want to go back to 370. Now, 35A also ensured that Dalits, the caste system was entrenched and perpetuated by the state of Jammu and Kashmir because Dalits did not have the same rights as other communities, as other castes in Jammu and Kashmir under the permanent residency laws. Then, of course, were women who married non-state subjects, women who married outsiders, were again disqualified, disenfranchised as citizens of Jammu and Kashmir. Since Jammu and Kashmir in the Union of India had a special status and had its own permanent residency laws under its own constitution, under its own system and state and law, it debarred women who married non-state subjects, which meant that I was debarred because I married a non-state subject. I got disqualified under its permanent residency laws, except that there was a High Court judgment in 2002 which reversed this gender discrimination, but only partly. And that High Court judgment had come after a long struggle against this gender discriminatory law, this highly illiberal law in J&K. Why did I say Jammu and Kashmir High Court judgment was granted justice only partly? Because the children of the women who married non-state subjects were again disqualified. They could not inherit any of their parents' properties, mother's property or mother's inheritance from J&K. They could not have any citizenship rights in J&K, which meant that, my children, my cousins' children, after displacement, most of the Kashmiri Pandit women married outside the state because we were dispersed across the country. So therefore, it personally affected me, and it personally affected all my cousins, my siblings who married non-state subjects, and it was essentially women. Second, 370 in itself, uh, we must remember, had been eroded over the time, not by this particular government, but by the Congress government, by the successive Congress governments. It happened under Indira Gandhi. It happened before. It happened even during the 60s, and therefore 370 itself did not, it did not have as many powers as it was granted initially in 1950 when the Constitution of India came into existence. Having said that, 370 became a blackmailing tool. As Yana pointed out, the corrupt politicians, the corrupt leaders in Jammu and Kashmir, one sold 370 as a trophy that Muslims had negotiated with New Delhi, that Muslims of Kashmir had negotiated with New Delhi, and since they had, New Delhi did not have any say in the matters which were specific to the state, they ruled as princes, as kings and queens, as feudal lords of J&K, which meant, the whole idea of India as a democracy failed in J&K because Jammu and Kashmir was ruled as if it was an autocracy, as if, all these leaders who had so much enormous power on many matters, including permanent residency laws, they behaved like autocrats. So therefore, 370 was counterintuitive to Indian democracy. It was counterproductive to Indian democracy. It was not a democratic law. It did not provide equality. Also, because look what happened. In 89-90, an ethnic minority was cleansed. But Jammu and Kashmir as a state did nothing to reverse that genocide, did nothing to bring back that entire ethnic community. Because despite the fact that they had all the powers and all the laws, on land, on property, and permanent residency, the state completely failed. So, and also the fact that, the Indian Constitution is secular, it's pluralistic, has fundamental rights. To begin with, Jammu and Kashmir Constitution did not have any of it. So I have been saying that, Article 370 as it is was an albatross round the neck of Jammu and Kashmir. I think now that it's gone, Jammu and Kashmir is on a new path with new beginnings, and there is a whole world, that Jammu and Kashmir can access for various things. And also the fact that if Jammu and Kashmir, if especially Kashmiri society and Kashmiri civil society decides that it has to end violence, that Pakistan has to be defeated in Kashmiri society, there is a whole world, there's a whole market, there is, as Yana pointed out, there are people who are willing to invest in Kashmir, provided Kashmir provides a sense of security, provides a sense that, it is like any other part of India. And 35A, I think, is included in what I said because it essentially was about permanent residency laws. Now, I was hoping that somebody would talk about, Gilgit-Baltistan, PoK, where Pakistan has deliberately, consciously changed the demographics in favor of Pakistan. Whereas in the last 70 years, India ensured that there is no demographic change in the Muslim majority state of Jammu and Kashmir. The only demographic change that happened in the Muslim majority valley of Kashmir was that the only ethnic minority, that the Hindus of Kashmir, were cleansed. So again, Pakistan was able to ensure demographic change in Indian Kashmir because of cross-border terror, and it was also able to ensure demographic change in POJK Gilgit-Baltistan because of the laws, because of the legislation, and because of the overpowering legislation it brought in those areas where thousands and thousands of Pakistanis have been settled in the last 70 years. So when Pakistan makes all these noises, and when their supporters in Indian Kashmir make these noises about demographic change, it is laughable, because the reality on the ground is that Hindus have disappeared from POJK and from Indian Kashmir, whereas the Muslim majority demographic remains intact, and it goes in favor, at least in POJK and Gilgit-Baltistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Arati. Very valid points there. In fact, this aspect has been covered by our report.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it out. So, I mean, in fact, since I'm the host, I didn't want to take too much time talking about the report itself, so I'm happy that you brought this out. Yana, before I come to you on the same point, I just want to recognize the presence of Mr. Amit Kaushish. Amit sir is a very dear friend of mine. He's a former financial advisor acquisition in the Ministry of Defence. He has a question. We'll take up that question as the last question of the day. But before that, Diana, you want to make your point on 370 and 35A? One second, I'm just unmuting you. Yeah, please go ahead.
I think I've already made my points very clear, and Aarti ma'am I second whatever she said. 370 had to go. What has to go has to go. But I want to say, like how she said how it affected her, I will say how it affected me. I'll tell you something. For Muslims, now this is a fact. A lot of people are insecure. Like when we moved to Mumbai, a lot of people are insecure to give properties to Muslims, especially from Kashmir. And I don't. First, I used to feel bad, but then when I started reading history, when I started coming to know that the point of view of the other side, they think about, even in Mumbai, it was something like they would always be scared that, oh, Muslims from Kashmir, what if they hide ammunition in our house? We don't want to lease out to them. What if they give refuge to militants? This is the first impression people have of Kashmiri Muslims. So, and then, in college, there were instances where Kashmiri Muslims would not stand up for the national anthem. Things like that. And I just thought that, all Kashmiri Muslims are not like that. And I have to, in my own way, I have to show it to my country, and I have to show it to the world that there are Muslims who are extremely loyal to their country, who have faith in their government, and there are Kashmiri Muslims who do feel that things were unfair the way they were going on, who do feel that we are responsible for the exodus of the Pandits. A lot of them feel that we are directly responsible. A lot of them feel that we are responsible because we could not stop this from happening. We could not stop the exodus. A lot of them are silent, yet they feel bad that, they remember, the old Kashmiri Muslims, they remember, when our neighbors used to be Pandits, they used to send, auntie used to send Alu Nadru home, and these kind of things, Manani used to sit and remember. So I wanted to show my country, I wanted to show the world that, no, all Kashmiri Muslims are not like that. We do feel the pinch, we do feel that things are unfairly going on in Kashmir. It is unfair. It is also, even today, I feel it's unfair. There are a lot of Kashmiri photojournalists keep coming out and talking about, oh, look, so much zulm happening to Muslims in India. I mean, come on, if a Tabrez Ansari was lynched, so was an Ankit Tiwari. I am not saying that everything is hunky-dory in India. We need to have anti-lynching laws. We need to have a lot of things. But I am not going to differentiate between my fellow countrymen just because of their religion. To me, an Indian is an Indian. And to me, if Kashmir is a part of India, if Kashmiris are holding Indian passports, if the central government of India is sending in the funds that we need to build our state, the administrative services are being supervised by the center. In that case, we are Indians. And if we are Indians, then what are we doing with these kind of rules that are opposing the Indian Constitution? The Indian Constitution, Article 15 says that you should not discriminate, that no one in India can be discriminated based on caste, based on community, religion, race, or anything. So that they are talking about inferior discrimination and also superior discrimination. Nobody is supposed to think that they're superior to the rest of the Indians. So what were Kashmiris doing with such rules that were not in sync with the Indian Constitution? Where is all the superiority complex coming from? So-called superiority complex was leading us, was giving us a bad name in the rest of the country. So there were certain things that used to disturb me as a Kashmiri Muslim. I used to feel as a Muslim, I used to feel that this is not right. There are a lot of nationalists out there in my state, and I have to show the world that there are people like that. And that was one of the reasons why I supported the abrogation of 370. And just like a lot of, I would like to add, just like Indians, even we feel bad when our soldiers die. We feel bad, when their families are crying, and they are there to protect us. They are there for our security, and then there's a bunch of us who keeps, who keeps abusing them. The same people who are there to protect you, you're abusing them. But I wanted to show to the world that no, there are Kashmiris who really bond very well with the security forces. I mean, if you come to Kashmir, you will see, I've said this before on many debates. The forces actually keep their guns aside and sit down and chit chat with the shopkeepers. That is the bonding we have with them. Especially on the northern border areas, like Gurez and all. Those people, the army and the Awam, they live like families. They celebrate Eid together, they celebrate Ganpati together. So I wanted to bring this part of Kashmiri Muslim culture in front of the country. And that is why, that's one of the major reasons I supported the abrogation of 370, because I felt that it was unfair on my Hindu brethren. It was also unfair for those people who gave their life working for Kashmir, and then they were told to exit because, they couldn't get a domicile certificate. It was unfair for my own people because the funds that was coming for them was being embezzled. They were becoming victims of corruption. Their promises were unfulfilled. So there were a lot of reasons that it impacted me, and I wanted it to go, the 370 and the 35 bill.
Thank you, Yana. We'll take this last question for the day, and then we'll end the program. Mr. Amit Koshish has asked this question. He wants to know, under the present circumstances, will the strengthening of the Panchayat institution will it not give a fillip to the rural economy in Jammu and Kashmir? And hence, shouldn't that be the priority of the government of India and the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir right now? I would have loved to ask this question to Fayaz, but since he dropped out, I would like both Yana and Aarti to address this question, since you have, your stakeholders in this process. For Yana, you want to go first on this?
So I didn't understand the question. So can you repeat it? Panchayat.
Basically, strengthening of the Panchayat institutions will kind of give a fillip to the rural economy in Jammu and Kashmir. Shouldn't that be a priority of the governments?
Yes, it will also give a fillip to democracy in Kashmir, because we are seeing a wonderful turnout of voters. As I said, they have a lot of faith, and it's also, and the best part is like, they are even, they are, unfortunately, a Hindu Sarpanch, Ajay Pandita, who was shot by militants, but he was voted by Kashmiri Muslims at his position of a Sarpanch in Anantnag, which is a volatile area. So it is a good way to bring Hindus and Muslims together. It is a good way to strengthen democracy, and not just rural development, but it is. I feel that yes, I feel that development will be impacted positively, and I feel it will strengthen the faith of the people in the governance. And so yes, it will help. But at the moment, unfortunately, Sarpanches are being attacked for the same reason. For the same reason, because puppets of politicians as well as separatists as well as infiltrators coming from the other side, they don't want any sort of democracy to sort of bloom in India, in Kashmir. They want people to give up on the idea of democracy or to give up on the idea of India. But the more they're doing this, the more faith, the more people, are losing trust and faith that at one point they used to have. The only thing is, see, people used to feel the general awam, the rural awam of Kashmir, they don't want all this militancy and all. They only want a clean governance. And the problem is that they used to feel that there's no one listening to them. The government officials would not come down and speak to them because of security issues. The politicians would not come down and speak to them because that was never on their agenda. They just wanted to embezzle the treasury. And so now the militants, they were one among them. They used to live with them in the villages. So they would try to, show their fake sympathy and all that and get their confidence that we know your problems, we stand for you. So, let's fight against India. But now what's happening is because the sarpanches who these people are voting are being targeted by those militants. So the locals are losing their faith on these militants. They are coming to know that who's really the enemy and who's really, their brother. So they are coming to know this difference.
Yeah, Arti, please go ahead.
Yeah, you can hear me. Well, a couple of points. One, I agree with Yana that it will democratize Kashmir more than it has been earlier. And also it will certainly boost the rural economy. But I would make a different point here. Look, Kashmir's rural-urban economy or rural development, urban development, all those, indicators of development in Kashmir are far, far better than the rural parts of Jammu region, for example. Jammu region's rural development is almost negligible. And it has happened because the last 70 years of democracy in Jammu and Kashmir has been Kashmir-centric. It has been focused on not only political aspects of Kashmir, but also focused on the economic development of Kashmir. Because New Delhi was always insecure and unsure that, all these politicians, whether it was Sheikh Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah, Omar Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti, and the people who came in between, all these people would use 370 as a blackmailing tool, as I said earlier, and would always invariably get massive funds. In fact, they used to get funds in the name of Ladakh, which was the largest by land in terms of territory. It was the largest region of Jammu and Kashmir's, the erstwhile state. So they would get funding in the name of Ladakh, but once they would get funding from the center, all of it would go into their pockets and mostly to Kashmir and mostly to their own constituencies. And in this process, Jammu remained extremely backward. The upper reaches of Jammu, whether you go to Doda, whether you go to Rajouri, Poonch, and even to Udhampur, all these areas have been neglected. You don't see any rural development in these regions. Similarly, Ladakh, which is now a union territory, again, the poorest and the most backward region of the erstwhile state. So yes, panchayat elections and empowerment of panchayats will help all those neglected regions in Jammu and some parts of Kashmir as well. And the second point I want to make is that that rural development and urban development overall, if you look at the rest of the country, I think it has been inequitable development in many ways. There are regions where you see massive development, good development, then there are parts, for example, in Chhattisgarh, in Jharkhand, in Odisha, these states, even in urban areas, people for the first time are getting toilets, for the first time are getting roads, for the first time are getting houses. That kind of development is not missing in J&K, especially Kashmir Valley. So, panchayat elections, more than rural development in Kashmir, I think, is allowing Kashmiris to think for themselves. It is going to allow them to take decisions by themselves, and it's also going to allow them to pull themselves away from the leadership that was behaving, as I said, like an autocratic system. And I think that is going to be a bigger accomplishment, at least in the Kashmir Valley, as far as panchayat elections are concerned.
Thank you very much, Aarti and Yana. I think with this we have come to the end of this evening's event. I want to recognize the presence of the Secretary General of Law and Society Alliance, Advocate Kumar Vaidyanathan, who is based in Mumbai. He is here today. He is listening to all the conversation that's happening right now on this event today. And also want to recognize the presence of Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, who is ex Director General of Military Operations. He just left just a few minutes back, but he was also listening in. I want to thank all the participants who were here today to listen in. Most of them are regulars on Law and Society Alliance's events. And I want to personally thank Ilshit Kogbore for joining us. It's too early in the morning for him in Washington, D.C., but he did make time for us. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, Arif Ajakia could not join. He had some technical issues. Even Yana faced some technical issues, but she overcame it and she joined. Yana, thank you very much. Aarti, you are a personal friend. I don't have to thank you. I'll only express my happiness.
Yes, absolutely. No need to thank.
Absolutely. I will just happiness that you could join and present your views today. The entire discussion was excellent. I was very happy that it turned out into a debate with Fayaz. I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing his name correct, whether he's upset or being not able to pronounce his name clearly. But anyway, he also dropped out, but I'll find out from him what happened really, why he had to leave. But all in all, it was an excellent discussion. As Aarti pointed out, the PoK and Gilgit-Baltistan issue could not be covered today, but we'll try and cover it some other time. I would like to continue this discussion and conversation on Jammu and Kashmir and the issue of the entire Kashmir, further in future events that Law and Society Alliance will be hosting, and we'll be coming out with annual reports of the sort on the issue. So I want both Yana and Aarti's support, and also Ilshat's support to the event, and also the participants' support. Thank you very much. You all have a nice evening, and good night to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Ilshat. See you then.
Bye.
Thank you, Anna. Bye-bye.